Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week, we have a bonus episode talking about Saturday Night, the film.
Live from New York.
Yes, and now it is. That is true.
And as history has shown, nothing goes wrong when we do a live episode.
No. Luckily, we didn't have a bunch of wine and whiskey before recording. Just a nice sushi lunch.
Yeah, here we go.
And now here we are talking about the show. So the movie. We just got done watching it.
Saturday Night, the movie. Yep. Written by Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan, directed by Jason Reitman.
1 second. I just want to say to anyone listening who has not seen the movie, we will get into some things that may be considered spoilers, but we will do that later in the podcast and we will give you a warning so you can pause the podcast if you want to go and watch the film and then come back and listen to what we have to say about quote unquote spoilers. Right now, we're just going to talk general impressions, things.
The movie in general, what we thought without giving anything away so that you in theory could listen to it if you wanted to before you see it and not ruin it.
Yes.
And then we'll get into all the nitpicky shit, which there might be a fair share. I mean, it's me, so there's probably a fair share of.
Yeah.
I will preface everything I'm going to say with, I legitimately held back tears at the end of this movie.
Interesting. So you almost cried. Wept like a baby.
Almost. I'm comfortable with myself in saying
good. You should be. No judgment here. I'm happy that you were so touched by it. I think the movie itself is, I mean, it's a love letter to Saturday Night Live, to Lorne Michaels.
To Lorne Michaels.
And it's an interesting way. I would be interested to see what someone who has no context of Saturday Night Live, what their impression of this movie would be.
Yes. Because, and I'll get the whole statement out, but it is woefully historically inaccurate. That being said, it is a movie.
Right.
And as someone who loves Saturday Night Live, I don't know if I loved the movie, but I enjoyed the movie. You have to take that part out of it and accept that it's a movie. And if I don't know, unless you just want to rip on it, it's hard to not really like this movie if you like Saturday Night Live. Because it is. It's a love letter to the show, Lorne Michaels. And it's an interesting way to tell a story.
Well, it is an interesting way to tell the story. It's very fast. So and that was the piece that I was like, oh, if someone isn't aware of what all of this is, there's not a whole lot of setup. You are thrown right into the action.
Yes. There is a little bit of an intro where the only people they kind of introduce you to is the cast. There's a little bit of a setup. They introduce you who the cast is, which is funny because of all the characters in this movie, those are probably the ones you know.
Correct.
Because there are like at least 20, I want to say. And I feel that might be a conservative number. 20 different characters that in theory you need to know who they are because they all play not necessarily vital, but important parts at different points of the story. And they don't tell you anybody is. Like there's no name tags on the bottom, like somebody walks in, not like Lorne Michaels, Rosie Schuster. So there's not that. So they do rely heavily on the audience knowing what's going on, at least the basic premise of what's happening, what needs to happen, and who are all the people involved.
Right. So if you're listening to our podcast, we assume you know who is involved and who some of these people are. And you're not going to know who everyone is.
The first time I saw it, I did see it with somebody who's not an SNL fanatic. They like the show. They know of it. They know the cast. But even he said he didn't know any of the writer characters.
Okay.
And he enjoyed it too. He thought it was a good movie. We talked about it as a movie.
Yeah.
And as a movie, it's decent. You know, it's got flaws like any other movie. I think it's an ambitious movie.
I think the overall outcome, if you walk away from that film, you're going to say that was fun. That was a fun movie to go and see. I think it's worth seeing in the theater just because I thought it was a fun experience. I kind of wanted it to be more crowded in the theater, but it's middle of the day. That's fine. But I think seeing this movie with a group of people who are interested in seeing this movie would be a lot of fun.
There are a lot of laughs. There are a lot of laughs in it. So you see it in a crowded theater with a lot of other people, I think the enjoyment just gets raised because you're in that communal environment.
And you mentioned this, there's a huge cast. This is kind of like a modern day SNL cast. There are so many people in this.
that people are going to bitch about who didn't get enough screen time and
yeah. That's
funny.
And so, like you were saying, there are a lot of B stories going on very quickly. Like they're quick hits on different storylines, so you don't really get immersed in anything except for the show, and that's what this movie should be.
And you get immersed in lore. I mean, he's obviously the driving factor of the story, so you do get immersed in his storyline. But again, not really emotional or personal. They touch on it slightly, but it's really, you're watching really his battle against the network. And it's funny, they make the network out to be the bad guy, which I think they do. I mean, you need obviously an adversary. So they turn up the volume a little bit on the network and their views and where they were putting the show on. But you don't get to see him really much as a person and who he is and what matters to him other than this show and getting this show on the air.
Yeah. I thought the performances in this were, for the most part, very good. Like I thought, and I'm not looking at them as like caricatures, right?
True. Yeah.
I didn't want them to be caricatures.
And they're not. I don't think they are.
No, I don't think so. I think
they are.
There are a couple that we can talk about when we get to the back half of the show. But I think the performances overall, like this young cast did a very nice job of portraying Chevy Chase and John Belushi without going overboard for the most part. And I think all in all, the acting was very well done in this.
Yeah, overall, I agree. Very well done. I think, Gabriel LaBelle, who plays Lorne Michaels, I think he does an excellent job. He's obviously the person we see the most on screen. He's excellent. I think everybody who plays the cast is fairly well. I really like Lamore Morris, who played Garrett Morris. I thought he was probably my favorite of all of the performers.
Yep.
And then, I think, again, it's hard because you just get thrown into people. Like literally you're like, here's Al Franken. Here, and some of them you have to really know, like, is that Paul Schaefer or who is that? And some of them they mentioned by name, like Neil Levy is a character in this film you meet early on that probably 90% of people who watch and know SNL have never heard of him. We obviously know him and love him, and he plays a great part in this film.
Yeah.
But again, you don't know who anybody is. But to that effect, I do think they do a really good job of introducing you to people as you need to know who they are and what their roles are.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit sometimes. Like I think we meet Michael O'Donoghue before they tell you he's the head writer. I'm trying to think of some other, you kind of understand who writers are. They don't really say it, but you understand they're the writers before they announce they're the writers. You obviously know who the cast is because of the intro. The network people, you got to fish out a little bit, but I think they do a nice job, again, without putting little name tags underneath everybody with their name and job title. The film does do a pretty good job, I think, of weaving everybody in and out as you need to know who they are.
Yes. And I think the way that they set up most of these introductions were so quick that you had to catch it or it was gone.
Yes.
And then you wouldn't.
And then they'd come back and you're like, where did I see that guy before?
Yeah. It was fast. The whole movie was fast. Like,
yes and no, though. And that's one of the things I really like about it. So everyone obviously knows it's, structured the 90 minutes before the show goes on air. And I was very interested to see how they showed that. Like, was it going to be nonstop move? Like, was there going to be like 24, like a ticking clock?
Right.
Which they're sort of, and I like the way how they do the clock. They kind of, there's times they'll throw a clock screen on and give you a time. There's other times where they try to organically have an actor come in and mention 25 minutes or 45 minutes left or what time is it? But it was cute to see them do that. But the one thing I did like storytelling wise is, there's all this pressure and you can feel it mounting and building and building and building. But there are a few times in the movie where they step away kind of from the chaos a little bit. And I thought they did a great job with that. But I guess overall then, so you liked it then?
I did.
Like overall, you're like, yes, fun movie, enjoyed it, go see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I recommend that people go and see it because it's fun.
It is fun. I will say, I think it got I feel like people wanted to jump on the praise of the movie with Saturday Night Live coming out.
Right.
I think a lot of the hype, and it's a good movie, but I don't know if it's, when they're doing the festival runs and stuff,
Yeah.
And it was like, award seasons and all this and it's a bit much. I do think I could see them getting a writing nod because I think this is a very well-written movie, especially when they try to cram as much information and things happening that they did in such a short time. And the way they did it, I do think it's written exceptionally well. Maybe the score, just because it's interesting, but I don't know what else is out there yet. But because it's such a ensemble piece, like I don't think there's enough meaty parts for any actors to get really noticed. I don't, the cinematography, it's a lot of great handheld and you're following stuff. It's nothing new. It's nothing really we haven't seen before. The direction's very good, but I don't think it's going to blow your mind to be, nominated. It's not, I don't think this is the best film nominated project, but it is really enjoyable. All right. Well, I feel like that's a pretty good job of trying to overview it. If people wanted to listen to this before they saw it and not give anything away, it's worthwhile. If you've seen the movie, hopefully keep listening. Because what we're going to do, we're going to nitpick a lot. We're going to talk about what we like, didn't like, pull some things out, and want to try to start a dialogue. So email us, notreadyforptpod@gmail.com, or find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Just, drop a line, tell us what you think, because I'd love to hear. We want to hear, especially once the movie opens up wide and people hear it, what everybody else thought, what we missed, what we didn't see, what we got wrong, what you liked. Love to hear people's opinions. So as we push off for the second half of this, we're going to try to start a conversation with everybody.
Yeah. But go see the movie. It's enjoyable. It's a great popcorn movie. Have fun with it. If you haven't seen the movie, now's the time to pause it. If you have seen it, let's get into the nitty-gritty details.
Did you see the colon blow reference?
I did see the colon blow.
I've been waiting hours to bring this up. Right? The colon blow? It was great.
Yes. I almost nudged you watching that, actually. I was like, oh.
I'm like, genius. That reference is 15 years too early, but I don't care. I love it.
Right. Oh, I actually just watched the colon blow commercial recently. Yeah. Okay. So I think we touched on this. Let's start with the performances.
Okay.
I think you mentioned the Gabriel who played Lorne Michaels did a fine job. I thought he was great.
Well, I mean, he carried the movie. Again, it is an ensemble piece, but it's all about him and his battle, quote unquote, with the network. And, it's very easy, I think, to do a caricature of Lorne Michaels, especially as people know him as older. And I think he did a really good job of capturing young 30-something Lorne, at the start of his career.
Yeah. And he didn't overplay it. I will say there were a few that I did mention, I think were a little exaggerated, but he did a great job. I was surprised at the role that Rosie Schuster played in this film.
Yeah.
I thought she was very good. Rachel Sennott. I thought she was very good, as Rosie Schuster. I was surprised at the weight that they were giving her in this story, because she's Lauren's wife at the time. Mm-hmm. There's this, I don't want to call it an affair, this relationship she has with Dan
which I don't think it existed later. I don't think they were together at this point.
They also, and that was something on the Dan character where it was that Dan had relationships with Rosie Schuster, Gilda, Lorraine, all at certain points, and they kind of play into this.
Them into the same night. Yeah, it was
and Lorraine gets jealous, and it was interesting. That was a weird little storyline.
Again, because you don't see Lorraine a lot, and one of the first times you kind of see her as a person is this Dan getting her in the hallway and doing the Fred Garvin character, which is something he did with Rosie. That's where that character came up, with his relationship with Rosie down the line. But that's kind of the first time you see her, and then you see her witness him do it to the other ladies, and then you're like, but they don't address it. And that's one of the things you're like, is there something more? What's going on? Especially with a character like Lorraine, who just doesn't really get a lot of screen time or attention.
Right.
Other than her complaining that she's not in the show or thinks she's going to get fired, which valid.
Yeah.
But he was good. And again, I thought Lamorne Morris was fantastic. Him playing Garrett was my favorite. He threaded that needle just enough where it wasn't a caricature, but he sounds damn near close to Garrett Morris, and his mannerisms. It was like, if you know Garrett Morris, he did a perfect Garrett Morris without going over the top.
Yeah.
And they gave him some really nice scenes. That scene with him and Jane, that might have been my favorite scene of the movie. It was just a great little one. I liked how they stepped away from the chaos going on, but I like how they featured these two particular. I think it was a great scene for these two. Yeah.
And I think they both did a really nice job. Yeah. The woman who played Jane, Kim Matula, she was good. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's playing Jane, so there's not much you can do with that character, right? But I agree, that scene with her and the Garrett Morris character was great. That was like a high point of the movie for me.
They did kind of give, with the exception of Lorraine, really, I feel like, gave all of the main characters, quote unquote main, like a little side scene or a little something glimpse behind the curtain. So, that was the Garrett and Jane scene, or at least for Jane. Garrett, you saw that, and you also got to see a couple scenes where he's talking to John Batista.
Yeah.
There's the scene where he's talking with Gilda, and Gilda, there's a great line in the Gilda character. He's talking about he feels out of place, and the Gilda character looks like, why? Because you're so much older? Which was funny. But so he had a moment, Gilda had that moment. Gilda has a nice moment with John out on the ice rink right before the show goes on the air.
Yeah, the ice rink in early October.
Yeah, she was definitely overdressed for that. There's Chevy and John get a little bit of their dynamic backstage. You get Chevy with his fiance, Milton Berle. So you kind of get a little bit of everybody. Dan, there's a scene with him and Rosie where they talk about their relationship, and it gives her a chance to talk about Lauren, but you see a little bit of behind the curtain of Dan. So everybody but Lorraine, main character, and that was for Rosie too. Rosie and Dan, you see a little bit into their lives.
Yeah.
So they did try to hit a little bit on each of those characters.
I thought it was interesting too how they played going back to the Rosie thing, just how important it was that she decide either Michaels or Schuster as her last name.
Yeah, so this through line of what name. I guess I think it felt like an attempt for them to somehow hang a little bit. No, like hang a little personal commitment, like what emotional baggage or emotional storyline, because there isn't any.
Right,
and that's really the one of Lauren and Rosie and what's going on and what name is she going to use? And it was a fine device to help push things through, but I don't think it really added much.
It just added to Lauren's stress of the night.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like it did. Like character-wise, it didn't. I don't know. It seemed like it kept getting me. Yeah, I guess underneath of it all, it was just another layer that he had to hide. But I guess so. Yeah, their dynamic was very, because they don't take any time to explain it. You just find out they're married, but I'm not your wife, sort of thing. So
right, that's actually the line. Yeah,
you didn't like Dan. You didn't like Dylan O'Brien.
No. I think he actually, when he was doing the Dan character, like when he was doing Dan doing a character, like when he was talking about the guns and specifically like what kind of gun.
Wait, he's doing Dan.
Yeah. No, I know, but he's doing Dan. Yes, when he was doing that stuff, I thought he was very good. Yeah. Again, it wasn't over the top. It didn't have to be. I didn't want it to be. I thought he did pretty good in the, getting the Dan cadence down. Mm-hmm. That was the piece. Mm-hmm. What did you think about the Belushi guy? What's Matt Wood? I
liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I don't necessarily love what they did with the John character in this film.
He's just angry.
He's not.
He's sulky.
He's not season 1 John. He's not episode 1 John. He wasn't crazy. Like, yes, he didn't sign his contract. That was definitely thing that was existed. But like they, again, to your point, that's something they just play up of like Lauren's deal. Like, I don't think honestly Lauren was the one dealing with that contract the whole time. There was a Dick Ebersol situation, but regardless. But it's another thing. Again, dramatic license. I'm not like complaining about it, but I don't like the fact that they had John play, for lack of a better term, season 4 John. There's a scene I really like. The sequence I really didn't like was Garrett had talked to Billy Preston, and they're talking. They give him something to like ease him or have him get more comfortable to act, and they give him a vial of cocaine, and he walks off with it. And later in the movie, Garrett Morris is stopped by John in the hall, and he's sniffing around. He's like, "What is this? What is it?" And he pulls out the vial, and Garrett's kind of joking he's going to offer it, and before he can even offer it, John just takes the cap off and like sniffs the whole vial and walks off. I'm like, cocaine does become a huge part of SNL, but everybody will tell you in that early first season, it was not, with maybe the exception of George Carlin, it was not a huge cocaine show. It was a pot show. Everybody was smoking tons of weed. It wasn't a cocaine show, really. And so, but that's everybody knows John for. So they want to do that, and then they have that scene in the dressing room where he's sitting there and he's got cocaine like residue on his nose, and then that prompts a fight with him and Chevy, and they yes, they were at odds, but going into that first show, like not fist fights between the two of them, because what really drove the wedge between them was Chevy becoming famous and Chevy becoming more famous than John. That's what really exacerbated that situation. But going into episode 1, they weren't there yet. And so to me, and again, loving John, I did not like the way they showed John in the film. I liked the guy's performance. I thought Matt Wood did a really great performance. I thought he did the subtle stuff really well. But the way they showed John, I didn't like.
I agree with you. It was not even with dramatic license, like it was just too far off of how he should have been portrayed 90 minutes up to. But again, that's the creative license that we're dealing with all of this, right? Like,
yeah. And then I am probably in the very, very small minutia of 1 or 2% who are going to call that out. You know, I think most people are like, of course it's John. How many times can we see him in the bee outfit so many times this episode? Like he's in the bee outfit for half the movie.
yeah, that was disappointing.
I mean, then the bees is another situation where, Lauren's saying, giving Rosie shit for where'd the bees come from and why are there bees? And like, Lauren's the one who came up with the idea with her for the bees. It was a Lauren and Rosie idea. And like, Lauren wanted a sketch for the cast to be together and showcase them all. And so it was like,
right.
The way they even just handled the bees in general, I didn't necessarily love. But I did, the story I did like how they told, and this is an interesting one, I think, is Chevy. I think the Chevy story is interesting. Because they do, I feel like, go kind of back and forth with him, where they show him as a pompous ass that he often was, I feel like, very full of himself. But they also take the wind out of his sails really well with the whole Milton Berle stuff with his fiance. Like, and I liked how they set this up in the beginning, where we see Chevy in the hallway and he trips and he falls and he's like, I don't know why I love this connection so much, but he does it. He's like, oh, sorry, I tripped over my penis.
Yeah.
And then he gets one-upped by Milton Berle, the man famously known for a huge cock.
Yeah.
Like that, just the fact that they threw that line in there for Chevy in the beginning to come together that way,
yeah.
I thought was great. But again, the him and John, like, I don't think he was so anti-John the way they showed him, again, at the start of the show.
I mean, he did push for John to get on the show.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, he was one of the guys who pushed to get John on the show. And now the first episode comes on. He's like, well, why is he here? And I don't know what this. And then, the fight in the again, you need the drama and you need the tension. So the fight in the dressing room makes sense in the story. It was just a little bit too much. But I did really like the Chevy getting the wind taken out sequence. Just that whole kind of side story.
Yes. The Milton Berle side story.
Oh, well.
Look, he's in it. Apparently, he goes from the 8th floor down to the 6th floor and then back up to the 8th floor very quickly.
Well, they have elevators in the building.
I know, but he was just performing on the 6th floor for Rumpus Room. And then 2 minutes in film time later, which is like real time, he's back up on the 8th floor alone with Jackie Carlin, who Chevy had been looking for a while.
This is where like is it anal retentive or whatever? Like, what bothers me is the whole thing. I was like, NBC is putting on this late night variety show. It's never been done. Then what the fuck is Milton Berle doing recording a show at 10:30 at night on a Saturday with his own crew?
Like, Rumpus Room.
What's going on with this? Like, that to me was the biggest thing. I was like, wait, this is so unbelievable. Like, how is there another variety show happening on NBC right now with Milton Berle?
Right. And if there is one, why is this such an anomaly?
Yeah.
That was strange.
So that I had to let that go. I had to try to let that go of like, there's not another fucking show at NBC right now. There's no way Milton Berle's showing up to NBC Saturday night. It's opening night to walk around and say hello, no matter who tries to drag him in at Saturday night at 10 o'clock.
Right.
I guarantee you he's got something better to do with his life.
Yeah.
But again, you need it for the film. You see the old guard, new guard kind of thing. So the idea was fun, and I did like the presence of old television being there, and you actually get to see what they're trying to rebel against or be different than. So I did like that.
Yeah. And I thought J.K. Simmons did a very good job with Milton Berle. When we did see that clip in Rumpus Room of him dancing with the girls, he looked like Milton Berle when he gave that smile at some point.
Looking at the camera. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was great. One of the early in the film things, actually there were two things that surprised me very early in the film. The first was Neil Levy getting a shout out right away. And then being a much bigger part of the story than I was expecting him to be. But it was fun. I liked him. I liked the character.
It was fun. It was very fun to see. It gave Lauren, I think, a bit of compassion. There was a personal relationship that he had that mattered to him, because you do feel like he cared about him. Yeah, like he mentions he's his cousin, and you do feel he's always asking for him, and it's not. He's always like by his side and like a support system. So I did like the character. They do there's a really funny bit in the movie where Neil is looking for John, who allegedly left the set, and he's trying to find everybody. And he walks by the departure lounge.
Yep.
Where you see, I think it's Paul Schaefer at that point.
Yes, you do.
But I don't know.
There's no way of not knowing that that's Paul Schaefer.
But he's talking to Howard Shore, which he calls him Howard. But other than if you don't know that, you don't know that's Howard Shore he's talking to.
And you don't get a really good look at him.
No.
Like, you don't really see Howard Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, again, kind of, I think, almost, but again, what they do for people like us, like the big fans, like all he has to do is show a guy with a mustache holding the saxophone. And, we know who it is. And it's a fun, hey, there's Howard Shore.
But that was just real quick. That was a piece that was surprising to me, that he didn't have a larger role in this story.
See, I'm not surprised that of the band, Paul Schaefer's the one. Because everybody knows Paul Schaefer. Right. Nobody knows Howard Shore, really. But Paul Schaefer gets 2 or 3 scenes and you see him because you know who he is. So I was at least happy they threw Howard Shore in there.
Right.
But so he talks to them, and Paul Schaefer, they give him a hit of marijuana. He starts freaking out and he locks himself in a room, which is a story that actually happened. Neil Levy has told this story. It didn't happen that night, though, but it was a couple weeks earlier where they had a party. The Saturday night team got together, I think at Franken or Davis's, one of their places, to watch the Howard Cosell Saturday Night Live show. And that was where this happened, where Neil got way too high and locked himself in the bathroom and he was freaking out, and Dan Aykroyd pulled him out. So again, knowing that story, like, it was one of those completely historically false things, but I love that they incorporated it into the fabric of the show and made it fit pretty well, I think. It was a fun thing for that character.
And it gave him a story, because he is this through character. He is, with Lorne the entire time and coming in and out. So giving him something more than just being Lorne's assistant was good and nice. I was surprised. I was also surprised very early in the film, the way in which they decided to portray Andy Kaufman and have his mother drop him off at NBC.
Well, there's some truth to that, because there are the stories of when he went to meet to be on the show. I don't know night of, but his mom did drop him off and bring him to NBC when he talked to Lorne to be on the show originally. Like, I don't know if she did it night of, but I have read the stories. I think it's in Doug and Jeff's work where they talk about Andy Kaufman. His mom came and sat outside the office while Andy went in to talk to Lorne. So I didn't mind that. What I did mind, though, about Andy Kaufman is that they played it like Andy was in that character full time.
Well, they made that character look like that is Andy.
That's who Andy Kaufman
foreign man,
is. And it was, and maybe he did for all we know, but knowing that that's not who Andy Kaufman is, that weird character, it was very odd to see him play quote unquote Andy Kaufman.
Right. The foreign man.
The entire time.
Yeah. I thought
the foreign man, but then there were at least 2, if not 3 instances he could have uttered the phrase, "Thank you very much."
Yeah.
But he didn't. It was in the elevator, there was a scene. And when he did the thing at the very end, when he did that thing where he's doing the Mighty Mouse routine, everybody starts clapping. I'm like, here you go. Say it. Give your line.
But instead, Lorne says, save your voice, Andy.
Yeah. So
I thought Nicholas Braun did a great job as Andy Kaufman, though.
And as Jim Henson. I liked him as both.
And as Jim Henson.
Yeah. I mean, Andy Kaufman saved SNL.
He did, according to the story in the film.
But you know what? I kind of like that idea only because what's the best sketch? What's the best bit?
I was going to say, otherwise it's Chevy saving it with that Weekend Update.
Right. But I'm saying the actual episode in real life. The best thing from episode 1 is Mighty Mouse.
Yes.
So it was kind of fun that they showcased that as the thing that kind of started to turn people around. The Chevy taking over Update was a bit much for me. I mean, it did happen. Lorne was originally going to do Update, yes, but it was much earlier than obviously night of that Chevy took over.
Sure.
But I like that they acknowledged it. I mean, it was fun that they put it in there. I don't know how well it plays story wise, but again, as a SNL fan of the show for so long, I like that they at least acknowledged that was a thing that they in the history of Weekend Update coming. Speaking of Weekend Update becoming a thing, I love Tracy Letts as Herb Sargent for 2 scenes.
Right.
When he first came on, I'm like, is that Tracy Letts?
He was great.
He was very good.
And he gives this nice little monologue, like maybe half a page monologue of what Chevy's life is going to become. And it gets pretty dark in there and very real. But I thought he did a great job of the way in which he delivered it. Yes, he was very good.
He was good. And I guess who was the other kind of stunt? Oh, Brad Garrett. I enjoyed Brad Garrett as the Borscht Belt comic at the end. He fit that role. Have you ever watched, there used to be a show on HBO, like I'm Dying Up Here or something, about the Comedy Store back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays a very similar character. So it was very easy for me to buy him as that Borscht Belt guy.
Yeah, he was funny.
Yeah.
One of the other actors I thought did a really good job was Cooper Hoffman as Dick Ebersol.
Yeah, I think he did a good job in the role.
Yes. I don't think, again, going back to the history of all of it, definitely not Dick Ebersol's personality or the role he actually played in the lead up to Saturday Night. His performance, though, I thought was very good.
I agree. I liked his performance. I didn't like the role. I understand why. Again, you make the changes. It's Lorne. You know, it's here's your guy. Here's your hero. It's one guy. It's not a twosome. So I get why they shifted Dick's role and responsibilities and relationship to Lorne in the show for the movie. I just didn't love it. The choice.
No, me neither. I'm definitely in the Dick Ebersol camp more so than the Lorne Michaels camp as far as like the amount of praise that I think he's deserves. But I thought it was interesting because throughout this film, you know that Lorne's the hero. Like I said, I think this is a love letter to Lorne as much as it is to the show itself. But that discrepancy, that conflict between Lorne and Dick Ebersol in this film was a little much for me, where I was like, all right, like,
yeah, I didn't mind that as much because I understood. Yeah, I understood the change, but what I had a lot of issues with, and again, this is just being a historian and a fan of the show, is how the network was so anti the show, which wasn't the case. You know, there's the Johnny Carson call, which never happened.
Right.
The night of, you know, I mean, the whole reason the show existed was not because NBC was having a battle with Johnny Carson. It's because Johnny Carson's like, I'm not putting my reruns on anymore. So you guys need to figure something else out. There wasn't like an argument. It's like, figure it out. And then the president of NBC, Herb Schlossler, was a huge, like, this was almost his baby. So you had the president of the network backing this show. And not even all the affiliates. And they did an interesting thing where they brought the affiliates in, because it's interesting. You know, in the storyline, there's a big affiliates meeting in May of that year. So that whole kind of idea did happen, just again, not night of.
Right.
But, you know, Saturday nights, you know, some of the affiliates weren't even carrying Johnny reruns. So it's like, it was kind of like you know, they had nothing to lose by having this show be successful.
I mean, we talked to Dennis Perrin about his NBC affiliate in Indiana did not carry the show.
Yeah, the show, let alone. Yeah, so I kept having issues with the network not wanting the show, and the was it David Tebbutt character, which, like, again, you need the face for the villain. I get that, but it was like a little bit much. Like, this guy's gonna not put the show on again when you know what happens, and that's what it was like. There was so much drama about the network not going to put the show on and put a rerun of the Tonight Show on. I think the writing's really great. I love the writing for this, but I just wonder if it wasn't that and it was more just the show against itself, if it would be any better. Because, like, the fucking end, when, like, what are we going to do? Do we go live? Do we go live? You know they go live. Why are we spending like 3 minutes of tenseness close up to everybody looking around for Willem Dafoe to say, go live?
Right.
You knew it was going to happen. That being said, to my earliest point about almost in tears, I thought the last 15 minutes of this movie were fantastic. I loved it with the almost before that, the Billy Preston montage when he starts playing Nothing from Nothing and they start bringing everybody in. You start seeing everybody, you know, come together. And I think the first time I saw it, I think was when the cast was all in the wings getting ready to go. And Gilda's like, let's go take our pick. Like, because you knew they were going to do it.
Right.
That was the first time it hit me. And then the last one we just saw it was the very end when Chevy says the line live from New York.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's like, like if you love the show, you're just like, fucking A, yes. And to me, that was the best part.
Yeah.
Just that moment.
It was good. I mean, they did a really good job on that whole build up throughout, even though, to your point, like you said, you know it's going to happen, but they build that suspense and tension, and they do a really nice job in it. Of building that so that you're invested at that point.
Yeah. And like I said, maybe without having the, network against them so much, it doesn't have that, the stakes aren't there that high. It's just, that was one of the tough things of all the things I tried to let go of. I had a hard time letting go of, like, the network want you to fail and they don't, this is just a bargaining thing. And it's like a lot of people thought they were going to fail, but I don't think anybody really, like, was rooting for and wanting them. to fail. And then I thought Willem Dafoe was just a little bit of a caricature of the bad studio guy.
Yeah. Yes. I think he probably was a little over the top. I don't know. I think the way in which Willem Dafoe portrayed this evil face of the corporation, right? Like he is, I don't know. I thought he did an okay job. I see what you're saying, but I liked his portrayal of, he was in the beginning of the film, he's talking shit to Dick Ebersol, and he's like, this isn't going anywhere. And then when he finally meets Lauren, he's like, this is great. Don't let anybody stand in your way, even me. Right. And he's like talking him up. And then when the shit hits the fan, he's like, no, you're done.
Well, he's talking him up because he wants him to put the show on because it's going to fail.
Right.
He's not really talking him up.
No, I know. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like the way in which he like goes back and forth. Yeah. I
mean, it's very similar to the Ebersol character. I don't like the role.
Right.
But I think the performance was good. Like Willem Dafoe did a good job in that role. I just didn't like the role.
Yeah.
Really.
I get it. The ones that I don't even know if I would say bothered me, but the ones that I thought were caricatures were Franken and Davis. I thought they just, the way in which they portrayed them as these like Midwest young bumpkins who are like getting the blood thing, and then they're all covered and they spray Lorne with blood at one point. Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. It didn't bother me only because, again, like kind of the historical accuracy of it all. Going into episode 1, Franken and Davis are nobodies.
Sure.
They literally shared an apprentice credit and salary. 2 guys paid for less than the price of one. But everybody kind of knows Franken and Davis. So you have to have them in there. And for whatever reason, I thought the way they showed them at just enough that way worked for me, especially because so much of the time we know them, especially in this early era of SNL, it's the Franken and Davis show.
Right.
And that's what they do on the Franken and Davis show. So I kind of liked them acknowledging almost like a tip of the hat to that relationship because you have to show them somehow. And I actually liked it. I thought it was fun. Yeah. It didn't bother me.
There were some writers. So we see Alan Zweibel apparently gets hired at a bar.
Last minute.
Okay. Right. Suspending belief there. That's fine.
But you know what? It worked narratively, like in the structure of the show. Like Lorne leaves the show. He doesn't know what to do. He's like taking his moment of whatever.
Yeah.
And like, happens to walk into a bar with open mic night at Saturday night at 11 o'clock.
Sure.
And like, yeah, you need
then he comes on and gives Chevy the joke when he's doing update to like, yes.
I kind of wanted him because again, they steal from all different eras and different years and stuff. Yeah. I was kind of waiting for when Chevy started to do the jokes and the cue cards fell. I was waiting for a hand to come up from under the update desk. Like as Zweibel was already under updates, handing notes up that way.
I thought that was going to happen too. Yeah.
Because they've cheated enough shit already by that point. I'm like, it's SNL lore that they would hang out under the desks and like just do it now.
Right. Just do it.
But
we don't see, I mean, they're in the credits. So I guess we see Ann Beats.
Oh, we see Beats.
Where is she?
Beats is the woman with the glasses who bitches about the censor being like that. Like she's
right.
She goes to O'Donohue because remember, and her and O'Donohue were together at the time.
That's right.
I think she's in one other real scene where Neil Levy's looking for John, and she says, "I don't watch the animals, or I'm not an animal trainer." But that's Ann Beats.
Yeah. Okay. And Tom Schiller. We think he's the one with the incense, the sage?
I gotta say, Schiller's credited in the credits. They never mention, I don't hear anybody ever calling Tom's name. I feel like he's the guy who's bringing the incense around and trying to
burning the sage, getting rid of all of the bad voodoo.
I'm guessing that's Tom Schiller. But again, so somebody who knows, I guarantee somebody out there knows. Yeah, write us, email, text, let us know. But yeah, I think that was Schiller. Marilyn Suzanne Miller wasn't there, so that was fair that she wasn't actually in the show. They didn't cheat her in.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping they would cheat her in.
But everybody else? I think everybody else got a little bit of Paul Schaefer a little bit.
I thought Paul Russ did a nice job as Paul Schaefer.
He was fine.
I mean, he didn't have a lot to do. There wasn't a lot of.
He was actually probably the biggest character-y person, probably for me. I think might have been him doing Paul Schaefer, maybe.
Oh, really? Because I didn't even feel like he did that much.
He didn't, but that's why
Was it like the wig and makeup?
I think they just made him look a little bit too much of a character.
Yeah. What else? Should we touch on? We mentioned Colon Blow.
Yeah, so there's tons of little things. I mean, I think we got through all the big, again, it's a movie, dramatic license. It was fine. Like I said, they take the Milton Berle thing, of course, is a big thing that never existed. The Johnny Carson call that night and the relationship with Johnny in the show. Again, Johnny would go on to dislike the show,
right?
But he loved the show, or at least the idea of the show when it started. But there's tons of little things that they stole here and there, which for the most part, I think I liked all of them. I just love seeing this SNL stuff in there. Like it started in the beginning with Garrett's audition, and he's doing White Guilt Relief Fund that he does later in season 1. Well, and the fact that Garrett even auditioned,
right?
Because Garrett and Chevy were hired as writers and never did an audition. Gilda never did an audition. But I like that sequence. It was a great sequence of them doing their auditions. Lorraine's wearing a Groundlings t-shirt.
I saw that.
Like I said, Garrett. But what's surprising? They show the auditions and they show John, and John auditioned with the samurai character.
Right.
So why would you not be a little bit true to form?
Well, maybe they don't want to. I mean, we talked about that with samurai, like cultural appropriation. Maybe they didn't want to do that in the movie.
You're probably right.
Because they took, like you said, they took license, right? Like they
That's
have the construction worker set there. That didn't happen until later in the season.
With Lily, right.
They referenced Julia Child, the whole Julia Child sketch.
Season 4 sketch that they're saying they had opening night, and Lauren's like, we're going to hold it off.
Right.
But I like that you acknowledge that it existed.
Yeah.
In the lore of the show in that era.
Right.
I liked. Lauren comes out to do his weekend update bit, and they bring John out to do the weather.
Yep.
And he does his weather, which for me, and maybe because it was John, I don't know.
It's definitely because it was John. I don't even know what you're going to say, but it's because it was John.
That's where for me, I really thought the film started to take a turn and really started to move, and like things started. It was like, because they saw John do that's the first time I think people were into the show, like the crew and all, because John does his weather rant and everyone's like, yay. And they all start applauding. And like, Lauren's like, okay, you win. And it was like the first sign that like things were going right, or could go right.
Yeah.
But what else was Garrett sings they have to do the sound check. And I thought for sure, because they set up Garrett was going to sing an opera.
I did too.
And he sings the Get Me a Shotgun song. We mentioned Fred Garvin. I like how Chevy does the fall. He does the pratfall early on in the show as an acknowledgement to the fall he'll do for, starting the next week.
Yep.
I'm sure there's tons of Easter eggs we missed. There's the land shark head, an oversized land shark head, but there's a scene in the hallway and like the land shark head goes past in the background. And
when Chevy knocks on the door for Neil, he plays up the land shark bit.
Right. He does the land shark bit. That's true. That's a good one. Kind of, I was like surprised they didn't do stuff, like kind of surprised they didn't have Gilda break out and Emily Latella or Rosanna Dana. Just somewhere.
It kind of seemed like she was doing that in the beginning, though, when she was rehearsing. Like she was rehearsing to herself, and it kind of seemed like Emily, like she was doing an Emily Latilla. Mm. But I was actually surprised that they didn't play up Gilda more.
In the film in general?
In the film in general.
Well, you're just so limited. And again, she technically, she legitimately was not that featured, in the beginning. There's that one. I'm
just saying we're talking about all of this creative license, and she is one of the more popular characters to come out of this era. You do a Chevy storyline, you do a John storyline.
Right.
I was surprised they didn't do something more with Gilda, except that everyone loved her and she was charming and like got up on the crane, the camera operator. I just was expecting more. That's all.
Yeah, they just gave her kind of two supporting roles. The scene with Garrett in the lobby where she talks about Garrett with him about why, and then with John at the ice rink, which is kind of like the big sentimental ending scene before the movie.
Yeah.
Climax,
yeah.
But overall I didn't mind. I didn't mind all the stuff that, wasn't factually accurate for the episode itself as far as sketches or jokes or lines.
I did like that they gave a big role to the Billy Crystal, Valerie Brumfeld piece and them getting cut or not. And time and
he did a really great Billy Crystal, and that was a really fun thing. That was another one which they were great scenes to cut away from all the chaos and madness.
Yep.
But still help tell the story about how the show's too big and how do we make it work? We know what we're doing. And him and the woman who played Valerie Brumfeld, they were both very good.
Yeah.
But I agree, that little kind of side story you'd cut to every once in a while of them. We're not going to have enough time. okay, we can cut it down here. Can you cut it down? Yeah. Okay, we're in this together. Yeah. And then with Lauren finally, saying sorry, that was really good. It was a really good little backstory, side story. The bricks were a little much.
The bricks
whole brick
were a little
metaphor
much.
and storyline and all that nonsense.
Was nonsense.
Just like, oh, we're gonna go brick by brick, and then we're, piece by piece, the show comes together, and at the very, very end, the last brick's gonna come into place, and we're gonna all be.
And Chevy is helping lay brick at the very end. I was like, what the? Okay, yeah, that was a bit much.
The guy who played Carlin was good. Was it Matt Reese? I liked Carlin. He's another one. Like, sounded just enough like him.
Yeah, him and the Billy Crystal guy too.
The Billy Crystal guy was excellent in that regard. But and it was so funny. I remember we talked about pulling the Carlin. Yeah. For those first, the first time we see him, he's bitching. He's like, I just can't come from behind the curtain. I got to walk down here. But he's like, he had his mannerisms and his voice and the George Carlin vibe down really well. I liked watching him. That was fun. Yeah,
it was good. Most of these performances I thought were really good and fun.
The show lineup board was in Lauren's office, not out in the hallway for everybody to see, but they have the whole lineup board in the office. And it was fun. I kept trying to look at it because there were about like 50 note cards on that board of like what other stuff there was, like Triple Track and Speed and Hard Hats and a bunch of other different sketches that were other sketches that fans would know from the first few episodes. So that again, another one, like I'm watching, like that board wasn't in the hallway,
right?
But totally works.
Yeah, it was fun.
Robert Wall. I interrupt. You were saying Robert Wall?
Yeah. Robert.
That was a great one. When I found out Robert Wall was in this, one of the trailers, I'm like, Robert Wall's in this movie as Davey? Yes.
Dave Wilson. Oh, I thought he was good. He was
very good in that part.
Yeah. I thought he was good. I thought the part was funny too. When Lauren questions him, like, are people on board with this? He's like, yeah, this is where we all want to be on our Saturday nights. Yeah, I thought he was good. He was fun.
He was good. I like the guy who played Joe Disco. I don't even know who the hell that guy was, but like nobody famous. Like the guy was great. And that's like a role I think in this particular movie is interesting. Like, you're the guy, you're the stage manager trying to wrangle all these cats and make it all come together. And that guy had a good role and pretty meaty for that guy. He did a good job.
Justin Matthew Smith.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, he was good. That was fun.
Musical, Batista was fine. The Janice Ian bit was funny. You at least acknowledge that she was there.
Yeah.
So that was good.
I enjoyed. I was trying to play. I didn't realize it was John Batiste at first.
Oh, really?
And I was like, I know that. Who is that guy playing Billy Preston? And then it clicked in the scene with Garrett, like when they were going back and forth with Garrett. Yeah. Yeah, he was good. He was fun. And he did the music for the whole film too. Yeah.
That's why I could maybe see. I definitely think this gets a writing nod. I think it is a brilliantly written film. It's really well done writing wise. And then maybe him for the score. Maybe it depends. Again, I have no idea what other like music's out there this year, but it was interesting. It was done very well. So I could maybe see that as the other like kind of award nomination they get.
Anything else you want to hit before we go?
I didn't love the Page. The Page kid outside again. It was kind of a cutaway. Yeah, well, the thing that bothered me, I guess, maybe the most about him wasn't necessarily him, but at the end, Lauren has the thing about, we gotta teach the Pages. Tell me if I missed something here.
Yeah,
he comes and he tells Neil, we gotta teach the Pages about the show, whatever, because he sees them trying to get people in the show, and he's not really selling it very well.
Right.
And they come upstairs, and all of a sudden, there's a huge line in the hallway. Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, look, we packed house. What do you think?" He goes, "I had to tell some lies, but do you think we can get him?" We can see it, and I was like, "What's the lie?"
I'm pretty sure it felt to me like there was a cut scene.
Like what's the lie?
There was something that happened. Either I was thinking when Lauren went out to the bar, they may have had a little interaction or something that we missed between.
It was just weird that was in there, and then you don't not say what it was. But I don't know. I'm sure we missed some stuff. So hopefully, people can drop us a line, either, like I said, on social media or shoot us an email, notreadyforptpod@gmail.com. Either things that we might have missed or got wrong, because we literally just saw this and hadn't discussed it and then jumped on the mic. So we could be wrong about some things. But overall, I really liked it. It was fun.
Yeah, I liked it. It was fun. I also knew going into it that it was not going to be historically accurate, and to just kind of suspend my belief in that manner, and it worked. I thought it was a lot of fun for that.
I think I did a very good job of that, of suspending my disbelief, because I was ready for me to dislike it because it was going to be so inaccurate, and I was going to spend the whole time being like, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. And so I was able to not do that. And like I said, it was very hard for me to just watch it as a movie. I will admit it was just as a straight up movie was difficult, just my connection to the subject and how much I know about it.
Right.
But I did enjoy it as a movie. And I do think it was fun. Like it was a fun story to tell.
Yeah, it definitely was.
I'm just dubious as to how many people actually give a shit and care about it.
Well, all four of you should write to us and let us know what you think, and let us know if you have any questions or different points of view, because I'm interested to hear what other people have to say.
Definitely. But yeah, it's good stuff.
It was good stuff. Well, thanks for listening to this bonus episode.
Bonus. Woo.
Yeah. Woo. That's hard work.
This one's free. Don't worry about it.
This one's free. It's not behind the paywall.
Not yet.
Yeah. That's it. I think next week we have the recap show.
And then we'll be off a couple episodes in the off season,
and then some fun interviews for the off season as well. So this was fun. We hope you enjoy the movie as much as we did. Send us your thoughts and comments. And until next time, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.